Follow the conversation. This is Afternoons on the Dove.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Afternoons on the Dove. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and today is Tuesday. We have Andy Maurer in the house. Andy has been doing Christian financial management for over 30 years here in Southern Oregon, and if you have any questions about managing your money in these challenging times, may we encourage you to pick up the phone and be a part of the conversation. The phone number is 776-5368. So whether you're listening online right now or you're watching on the Dove TV or if you are listening on your radio, we can take your calls. And if you want to remain anonymous, we can certainly respect that as well and put you on without your name. The number is 776-5368 as we deal with financial issues. Hello, Andy. How you doing, bud?
Well, I'm doing good.
You're looking good.
Yeah, we're busy. We're up to our eyeballs in problems and theories and thoughts. And
that's what you do.
You guys were good this morning. It was pretty hot.
Oh, yeah, you know. My pro-Israel thing.
And when you got all wound up, you were really good.
Yeah.
When you're just, the host.
I'm not so good.
I'm not.
Go ahead.
You're not. No, it's when you get on the box and you really go.
Okay.
I like that.
All right. Well,
I even listen.
Oh, do you? Good for you. Well, listen, money management these days is interesting. Here we're watching Italy go down. Greece is in trouble. Our own numbers in the United States are in trouble. People are trying to figure out better ways to plan for retirement. Some people are just trying to figure out the bottom fell out. They can't even pay the bills they have. I've never seen such financial challenges. Running a ministry today is, this word budget. We might as well just turn it into a four-letter word and throw it out the door because it just doesn't work.
Well, it depends on what your definition of a budget is because, it's if it works according to you, then that's your spending plan. If it works according to you, that's not particularly God's program. And sometimes, as we talk about, now that you're running this station on a goodwill faith basis, we never know when the money's going to come in.
Yeah. So how do you budget nothing?
Yeah, well, you budget and you plan and you try to do the most with the least, and then sometimes you have to sit here and say, wait for the next amount to come in, and sometimes that doesn't match up with dates, and that's when we find we run into the world and run into problems.
Is that a lack of faith when the money doesn't match up with the dates that are due? Is it dishonoring God?
Yeah, I don't know about all that. That's what you pastors. That's what you pastors talk about. All I know is we're out of money.
Yeah.
Okay, and God's promises become the most important part of your life. That's why we encourage teaching the Bible, and we teach what God's words and all that, because He says to don't be anxious for tomorrow. That I'll meet your needs and I'll bless you and I'll pour out a blessing till there's no more need, and you do everything you possibly can, and then sometimes it doesn't fall on the dates that someone else wants you to pay the money. I have an obligation to pay what I owe.
Yeah.
I just sometimes can't pay it when they want it. And so we have a conflict, and well, then you have to have conflict resolutions. And of course, personally, you doubt yourself and you doubt God, and you have a spiritual problem. So anytime we have any kind of cash flow problem that doesn't match up with our plan or whatever, we have inside turmoil, and that's what you and your counselors, you guys all talk about. And
so are you saying anxiety of not having enough money to pay your bills, even though you're trying hard, it's just not coming in? You do the counseling, but I bump into a lot of people these days that are, very devout in their commitment to the Lord, but the bottom's dropped out for them. And the bills are this much, the income's this much, and they want to honor God, but now they're guilty that they're not honoring God.
Oh, they tell me they're a tither, they're a saver.
Yeah.
We buy used cars.
Yeah.
We've paid off our house. And, how come I'm not blessed by God? Well, we're taught name and claim it and all this kind of stuff. And we have what we call an economy. And sometimes God has got this economy in the world going on, and according to His plan, but sometimes our little specific Southern Oregon economy doesn't match up with God's overall plan. And sometimes our personal family plan may not match up with exactly the right dates or whatever, and yet He tells us still in Matthew 6 not to be anxious. That's a very difficult part of operating, is to not be anxious.
So what do you tell Jeannie when you don't have enough money at the end of the month?
We don't have enough money at the end of the month.
Oh, and she's not supposed to be anxious about that?
She gets anxious and she gets upset and tries to figure out how to fix it. And all security nature, Genesis 3:16, all the girls are going to go bail out the family, and then so they go get them a job and or they sell something or give away something. Or in my case, it's one of those, I know there's one more principle in the Bible I haven't read, and so I start reading the Bible and I pray harder and all that, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But God brings it in. He still says he's going to bring it in at the right time and the right amount. And over the years, that's what you don't ever get used to that. It's amazing how much faith you have in the past and the miracles that God has done in our lives, and yet we're scared to death of tomorrow. So that's a part of our nature, and I believe it's a healthy part of our nature. It keeps us on edge, keeps us praying, keeps us studying, keeps us learning, keep talking to God. I really think we're on earth here for purposes to have a relationship with God. And we get busy. Mm-hmm. We get distracted. We get to run a radio station. I got big problems. I got ministry. I got people retiring, and I got people that are trying to pay off, motorhomes. And I mean, we got major deals. And yet the Creator God still wants to have a relationship with all of us. Well, there's no quicker way to get a relationship than just have a little cash flow problem. Have a little withholding of the income, or lose your job or change. And I always have to go back and ask, why did this happen to happen? Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing what God wants me to do? Obedience is a huge problem that we have to worry about. I pray about obedience more than anything else, because God tells me things, like give away money or go help this person or be nice or all those things, and I don't want to do them. And so I have a problem with obedience all the time, constantly.
All right, let me say to our listeners, if you want to join us, the phone number is 776-5368. We'd love to hear from you, and got a lot of questions here today, maybe some you'd like to throw into the mix as well. How do you manage your money in a time that is as challenging as these? Now, we've seen these downturns in these cycles before, and we manage things different. We come out of them. In fact, yesterday, we had the lead story in the area of the Northgate development out there, and we had developer Steve Morgan on announcing REI and Trader Joe's and all of that's coming. I mean, that's an incredible movement of some kind of growth in this area. It's as big as the Commons downtown and that kind of a project. So Southern Oregon seems to have some bright spots in it as to what the economy may be doing, but somehow the residual of that hasn't showed up in a lot of people's lives and what they do. So I'm wondering, how are you viewing the economy? In other words, how do you look at it as a financial counselor? I realize one person can't change it, but can we as people have an influence on it? Or is this thing set in concrete and it's going to run its course? And
well, we're on a couple problems with our economy. On a side note, as they were talking about their new development, we were driving by the mall, and we're still amazed that the Rogue Valley Mall is still there, because we helped build the dumb thing.
Yeah.
And it was two Christian groups that fought over trying to build it and all that stuff, and that's old ancient history, and we don't even think about it anymore.
All right.
And so some of us don't really pay attention to what's going on. I listened to the interview this morning, and it's amazing how people look at this valley completely different than what we do. When you look at it from the outside, it's flourishing, it's all kinds of things,
Yeah.
It's growth, it's got a future and everything. We look at it from the inside, and I look at it from one person and balanced checkbook, or not enough money to buy food, or it turned cold, and so we're trying to figure out if our propane heaters will work because the wood's out or whatever the deal. Trying to take care of the basic needs, and you forget about looking at things from the overall deal. We're into we're down to a point of people just understanding the economy. An economy is producing things that people want and then charging a profit for it, and having money to a means of exchange, and we run the economy. And so every area has got to feel comfortable with what's going on, so that they continue moving money. Because one of the problems that we have is that we have allowed, we had a system taught to us in economics called the Keynesian theory of economics, and it's a theory, and the theory of it is debt funding. And so everything we do, we have two groups. We have people that go by Deuteronomy 28 that says that God wants us to lend to many nations and do not borrow, to the Keynesian theory that says we loan to everybody. So we've had governments set up on loaning countries money. We got our banking. We got to bail out our banking. We got to bail out our everything is to take care of the debt people, debt and debt and debt and debt. Now that's not God's side of the economy, but the debt has got so big that how you feel about it is how it's all working. So it's interesting to watch the advertisements now. We're already pushing for Christmas and feel good about it, lay away everything, for it, and then we're going to feel good. And Turkey Day isn't even here. I mean, we haven't even got done with Halloween, and they were already talking about Christmas. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to make artificially everybody feel good about themselves, feel good about buying a new car they can't afford, or expanding the big house, the inventory. Listen to the real estate people. The real estate that's available in Southern Oregon are the top end, the things that we really may not be able to afford. So we have some marketing issues that are very important, and we need to get to the right people and match up the incomes with the products that we have. But that's all part of business. But when you get into debt, then you get real sluggish. If you take a church in debt, they'll be very sluggish, and the pastor, if he's in debt, he'll be ineffective. So, and our businesses are the same way. You can't turn left. You can't make adjustments. You can't cut employees. You can't hire employees. You can't take on a new product or whatever because of your old debt. And then we got another problem, and you guys were addressing it. I loved what you guys talking about this morning. You were talking about Israel and the government and all that stuff, and we appreciate Obama and all the things he said. But the government is a huge player. It's a huge business person. I mean, it is one big, out-of-control business. Mm-hmm. And so we have an inflation problem. It creates its own. We listened to Will Reichman. He talked about interest rates and all those things. And I mean, it's so big. We have an interest rate problem. When individuals dominate markets like that, we throw them in jail. But the government is so big and so unwieldy that it makes its own impact on our system. So again, we're back to how we feel about our government is going to dictate how our economy is. And if we have an attitude of fear of the future, that's going to affect our government. That's going to affect our personal business. And so we need to, I believe, from our perspective, I'm coming back around answering your question, I believe God says he's going to bless us. He's going to meet our needs. He's in charge of our salvation. He's in charge of everything that we do. And so we can have a good, positive outlook on this, knowing full well that we may have to change congressmen and we have to change the president and we may have to cut down on our debt in our business, and we may not be able to borrow quite as much as in our personal as we used to. But, we can make a big influence.
Let me take a break here, Andy. We come back. You mentioned a word there earlier that I think is a trigger word, certainly a trigger emotion, fear of the unknown, fear of the future. And I find it very interesting that all indications are there's a lot of cash out there, but there's a fear of engaging it into this economy because it's so unstable, so people are just holding on to it. Businesses are not expanding because they don't trust the banking system. They don't trust the government. They don't trust the future. And what that translates is to that word fear. So I'll have you address the fear factor coming up in just a moment. Andy Maurer is with us with Christian Financial Management. You're welcome to join us. The phone number is 776-5368. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Follow the conversation. This is Afternoon on the Dove.
We're back, and Andy Mauer's in the house with us today, and we're dealing with managing your money in these very challenging times. And if you're like most, you're watching every penny these days, and we're asking a lot of questions. I don't know if we're getting any answers. I think the one thing that has come out of this economy, Andy, quite frankly, it's a topic of a sermon that I preached a couple of months ago. Who can you trust? I mean, who can you trust?
And what conclusions did you draw?
It comes to two conclusions. One is you can trust God, but can people trust you? And the point is, we're living in a day today where we're being lied to. Have you noticed anything on the news? They said this, nope, somebody else said that. The economists say this, no, the numbers say that. The bankers say this, no, Wall Street's saying that. I haven't found consistency on anything. If you look at all these polls, they're all conflicting. If you look at the unemployment numbers, it's all indication that the numbers that we're getting on some of these reports are lies because the real numbers are bigger. I mean, who can you trust? And so it creates a fear, and you withdraw. You become introverted. And those who could stimulate the economy don't want to do it because they don't trust anybody. They don't believe anything. I mean, it's just all become paper.
But this is how all this started. In the late 70s, early 80s, when we gave our life to the Lord, us NFL guys we're in the top circuit of money in the United States. We're talking to the gurus of all gurus, and it was one attorney, one accountant, one historian, one book writer, one campus president, whatever. Each one that you held in trust, they failed you. And so that was why when you got Swindoll and you got Chuck Smith and Arliss Priest and all these guys are talking about God having a plan for your life, and it is someone you can trust. You sit there and say, well, I've already tried the world. I've done it all. I trust physically anyway because I'm better physically than most all athletes in the world, and I got more money than sense. And so, but the people that you were with did not, you couldn't trust them. And then, as we've said many times, figures can lie and liars can figure, and that's what we run to now.
Well,
I remember even sooner than that when you were running for Congress.
Yeah.
I mean, we had more information that meant absolutely nothing than any I ever seen. I mean, and that's what we got now. And my journalism guys, my attorneys, my political science people in all these colleges, we turn out 1 jillion college people. And they all have surveys, and they all have books, and they all that. And then they want me to write a book. They want me to do a show. They want me to do a program. And no, there's one that was written a couple thousand years ago. And until I get it figured out, there's no sense going to another one. So we're going to stay with the Bible. And whether we understand it correctly or not, we're going to continue looking at it and letting it guide us and let it direct us. Because the government is out of control and it's not working. Okay, your budget may not. My financial planners, my insurance guys, all take their business, and that's the answer. Of course, I thought in this ministry, we had the cure for cancer because we took so much pressure off of people that we thought that would heal a nervous system, and I had a cure for cancer. So I was even worse than that. I found later that. Cancer is a whole different ball of wax.
Well, but the trust factor and the fear factor, I mean, we don't, the system is so messed up. We had the emotion of the system being messed up and the fear level being what it is and people trusting people. It has a tendency to spill over in your relationship with God. Can I really trust him? Can I really say, as you say in Deuteronomy 28, you shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow. Does that really work? I mean, does it really work that he'll meet all of my needs according to his riches and glory? Does it really, in 2 Corinthians 9, that says, he's able to make all grace abound towards you so that in all things, at all times, you have all you need. You want to believe it, but it's not working for you. In fact, the other side of that coin
I'm on the other side when I go to James and I talk about having selfish ambitions, and the reason I ask and I don't receive is because I have some selfish ideas. Well, I tell you what, I have a whole lot of selfishness in the middle of this whole thing. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what my fear is. My fear is a fear of my plan isn't going to happen. Anger is my fear, my plan is not happening. Those are still selfishness. And I have to go back to the selfishness, and I have to figure out that my motives are incorrect because I really want all this stuff to happen for me, to me, about me, around me. And that isn't at all what it's set up to. God says there are some things that you need. You need to eat, and you need to have a house, and we're in a mobile society, and we're into clothes. But you don't have to have all the right brands. You don't have to have, 43 ties and 13 pairs of shoes and 85 coats. But you do need a coat, and you do need, some sense with all this stuff. And so there is a balance where God will provide. But and I get very grateful when I discover in my prayer time what God has provided as opposed to what I have. What we're trying to do is we are trying to really make it ourselves, our secular humanism that we're taught. You set your goals, you work hard, you accomplish all your goals. This is a land of opportunity. And if you work harder than anybody else, you can accomplish everything you want. The purpose of going into a business is not to glorify God. The purpose of a business is that you can go make so much money that you can do what you want, when you want, how you want, and why you want. That's a pure, selfish, ambitious kind of deal.
All right, but in today's economy, the reality is that people now are coming to the discovery and to the conclusion that they're not exempt from the mess that's out there, that God's allowing them to go through this struggle as well. And in that struggle, they're beginning to say, all right, what is my priority? I mean, I crossed this bridge, I can't even remember now, 10 or 11, 12, 13 years ago. There was a point where God had me give the station away. I gave it away.
Correct.
And I'm not trying to set myself up as any super person. It was an internal struggle that God led me through. And Peggy and I sold our home to start this ministry. And then the Lord said, what you have in your hand, you closed and you made it yours, and I can't give out of that hand.
That's correct.
And so, and we gave it away for a period of time.
And so you're smaller now than you were then?
No, we're not.
Really?
Wait
is God giving some stuff back?
Yeah, but I'm not into bigness. I mean, in fact,
I understand that.
I struggle with that.
Yeah,
I really struggle with
totally.
that because in today's culture, you are measured about how big you are. I'm not into bigness. I'm into effectiveness.
That's correct.
I want to make sure that what we produce at the radio and television station is impacting lives. I'm not interested in big things.
And see, we're already talking. We're getting now in our 60s. And so all those things we used to talk when we were 30s and 40s and laugh at the guys in 60s and worrying about retirement, we're in it. It is amazing how fast it got here. And yet here we're still trying to trust God. We're still trying to focus. We're still trying to put our peace in there, trying to still, and I look around and I have more stuff to take care of, more responsibility. One of the things I pray that I wish God wouldn't have made me so responsible. I mean, I'm the guy that'll turn the lights off when the school's closed. I'm the guy that goes checks oil for the car. I'm the guy that go fixes this. I'm the guy who takes care of that or shuts the door or whatever. I got other people that are a little crazy and out of control, and I very seldom do I look at someone else and measure myself to someone else, because God has a plan for me, and I'm working for God. And it's a full-time job trying to keep me straight without me fussing with everybody else and all the other stuff we got going on.
Well, all right, so back to the economy. There's some lessons to learn in this downturn. And if the economy comes back, I don't know if, who knows where it's going to go. I mean, God does, but let's say there is somewhat of an upturn and things start to improve. If we don't learn something in this valley, I mean, it's kind of like, we'll turn right around and go through it again.
We will. We'll go through it anyway because we're on a Keynesian theory of debt funding, and we'll go through another about 10, 15 years. We'll recover on this one, and in about 10 years, we'll go through it again. We've been going on that cycle since Deuteronomy 28, where he says you're not. We want you to loan to many nations. We didn't want you to borrow. And when it got to the point we had a cash flow problem every time we had to forgive debt, then the bankers said, no, we'll loan you money. We'll try to keep this economy going and all this kind of stuff. And so the cycle has begun. And as long as 85, 90% of the economy is still going fine, we still got $3 trillion worth of business going on. We still got business guys that are actually making a profit. We actually have doing the same kind of projections we've always done, 2, 3, 4%, trying to keep up with cost of living, trying to keep up with the inflation rate. Pay attention to that. How much will the market bear? How much can you increase in price? How many people should you hire? What kind of markets we got in this thing? it's the businesses. The businesses are still going on, but when you overspent and you overbought and you over inventoried, you overhired, you overbought, and you put the 10% down and you leveraged 30 years and 40 years, 20 years and 80 years and whatever the deal is. That cycle, it makes a deeper trough than the other. But if we're living, balancing our checkbook and paying attention and eating correctly and working on the minimum and even minimum wage, some of these, it was interesting to talk about some football players. And the first thing they do is they're contacted by accountants and attorneys that their whole focus is to save taxes. So everything is a minimum down, and let's borrow and extend credit for everything. So they're in the $5,000-$6,000 houses, that were $600,000-$700,000 or $1 million houses, and then when we go through a downturn, they drop down to $400,000. We got this now. We got to talk about reverse mortgages, and we got to talk about all this debt, and yet some of these players went out and took their $1 million bonus and they bought a $200,000 house and paid for it. And they put all the rest of their money in a nice mutual fund that's getting a return because they're looking for the future. They're only going to play for a few 4, 5, 6 years. They put it in a mutual fund that's levered over the entire market that we got. It is interesting to watch how conservative people operate. Tithers give 10%, save 10%, live on the 80%, and our struggle is, okay, I got a $300 food budget. How can I feed everybody with my $300? Well, we get real creative, and we're getting books, and people are out teaching, clipping coupons and all that stuff, but they haven't changed their budget. We change oil, change your own oil, find the oil deal, find this thing. I mean, it's amazing how frugal, and we want the most with the least, because I really believe it's God's money.
All right.
I really believe it's his.
Let me take another break here. We'll be back. When we come back, I got some very practical questions to ask Andy. Maybe they'll ring your bell, and you're welcome to join us, 776-5368. Andy Mauer's in the house with Christian Financial Management. We'll be right back.
Follow the conversation. This is Afternoon on the Dove. Follow the conversation. This is Afternoon on the Dove.
Well, we're talking about the economy and how to manage your money better and how to be more frugal and how to look at things from God's perspective when it comes to managing your money during these very challenging times. Andy Mauer's with us. Andy heads up Christian Financial Management. He's been doing Christian financial counseling for years, and 776-0036 is the number to his office. And if you want to discuss something privately and in confidence, you can give him a call there, 776-0036. During the break, I was going to go another direction, but I want to come back to what you just said. We are going into a time in this country that is being pushed by the economics of the country, quite frankly, about the economy. I mean, that seems to be the big thing. And I think I kind of got arrested on this issue a couple of weeks ago. Then it was confirmed yesterday by an interview that I did. We're still looking at the number one problem in the United States being the economy, and we're going to put all these people in there supposedly know how to run a business or have had some kind of experience in doing all of that. The spiritual application to the economy doesn't get applied to the debates that you're hearing out there. But you mentioned the Timothy Titus rule, which are we electing representatives that would meet the qualification of being an elder in a church? And even that's become politicized. We elect people to boards that because they're successful in business, but they may not be qualified to be there. I don't know.
If it says here in verse 1 of chapter 7, or verse 7 of chapter 1 in Titus, it says, "For the overseer must be above reproach as God's steward, not self-willed, not quick-tempered, not addicted to wine, not pugnacious, not fond of sordid gain, but hospitable, loving what is good, sensible, just, devout, self-controlled." We just cut out the 5 o'clock news. I mean, our people are pugnacious and drink too much and run around too much and say the wrong thing, and they're quick-tempered, and we have a whole lot of interesting groups of people, and they make for the news talk shows and and all the different things that we very seldom do we get a real live high quality person that we're going to interview and check them out. And when they do, it's 1 out of 100. What makes the sound bites is all the people that are a problem. And as I said, if I'm going to be a Christian, this was the argument that we had to have in the early 80s. Can we use this Bible every day in what we do? So when I was hiring coaches, I looked for Timothy and Titus, qualifications of the overseer, and they had to match up. And you know what? That made the staff cohesive. I never had any problem with dishonesty. I never had any problem with alcoholism. I never had any problems with abuse of kids. They were all counselors and mentors, and I mean, and we can all figure out X's and O's. I mean, so that was for you that don't understand. That's the things you draw on the board and the plays you run and all that. But and everybody wants to talk about those all the time. It's kind of like finance. See, I would rather have you have good character and put everything in a CD than be sophisticated, be a rotten human being, and be sophisticated in how to use interest or leverage or the banking system or all these other things. So your character and integrity and your values and your heart condition is the most important part that solves all the problems.
All right, you've been listening to the plans like I have, and and I'm not asking you to endorse any particular one. I just find it interesting. Some are saying, Herman Cain saying 999. You got Rick Perry running around, they're saying a flat tax. You got this, you got that. One's saying, well, we ought to have the flat tax. You should be able to choose between the current system and a flat tax. I mean, my stars. I have not heard anything in this debate to solve this problem in America that it just might be A, spiritual, and B, I've heard no biblical financial application to the problem. It's all of banks and interest rates and unemployment figures, and we need to stop that and start doing this and get rid of that regulation, stop this. I mean, I haven't heard biblical application one to the mess.
That's right, and we're going to continue because, as we said, socialism in Keynesian theory of economics have continued taking care of the debt people. And anytime we're debt, we got to protect the debts and keep all those business going because that's Fannie Mae and Fannie Mac, and we got to have a house. And we've decided, we've overspent the cars to where it takes you 60 months to buy a car when you can afford maybe 36. You can't. The old timers taught me years ago. You can't pay the guy $25 to build a car and sell it to a $5 an hour guy. It just doesn't work. And it hasn't worked, and it isn't worked. The only way you can overcompensate those cost adjustments is by length of terms of the issue. And we're now, you can buy a house for $30,000 or 30 years. I mean, it's just out forever. And you can now buy a car and sign a will and do it for 120 months and put your car on the inheritance of your kids. I mean, it's just getting to where what kind of program can we come up to get this market to buy something that we think they need? Well, our advertising tells us a whole bunch of stuff that we don't need. And until they convince us we all got to have this kind of phone, we got to have that kind of deal.
We've come to the realization we're upside down in some of these things. And I know we've talked about reverse mortgages. We've talked about the incredible increase in foreclosures and voluntary foreclosures, which to me is an amazing moral problem in the country.
Problem, yes.
What do we do with a person who is upside down on their car? It's worth less than what they owe. And can they do anything? Or are they just stuck paying it out? Can they trade out of it, or what's the deal? Or
we try to trade down is one way.
How do you do that?
You take the balance that you have and you go down by a cheaper car, and then you take the balance from the new car and you put it on the other one. Now, the problem with that is the same thing we talk about the value of the homes, is that you now got a $3,000 car and it's got $8,000 against it because you had $5,000 deficit from the new deal. But then we learn how to run a car, learn how to use this stuff. I mean, you're not more valuable showing up in a brand new car than not when you go to church and show up at a ball game or whatever. Your value is your character. That really is who you are. And you just want the car to get there. You just want the pickup to get there. And so then you run that one for 150, 250, 300,000 miles. And by that time, you got the thing, you got that paid for, and then you can save for maybe a down payment on the next one. but you don't need, the Best Buy is like 2 or 3 years old. The best, we got some, if you want to buy a motorhome, we got some 206s out there that are brand new that's never been bought. I mean, there's some deals out there. I mean, if you really think you got to have a motorhome, I don't know why, but if you, I'd love to have one too.
Yeah.
And the thing about a motorhome is it's great until you want to get out of it. But motorhome, you travel, you stop, and the only thing you do is put gas or diesel in it. Anyway, you don't need I get editorializing here, but that may be exactly what you need to do. I appreciate you earned your money, you made your money, and I think you need to use it. But we need to stretch it a little longer and make it more efficient. We try to balance our spending, get it down to where the amount is. My government, I really do not complain about how they spend the money. And Katie bar the door, it's a multitude of abuses and all that stuff. But if you got $3, $4, $5 trillion coming in, just spend $3, $4, $5 trillion, whatever we decide how much is coming in. But don't overspend it by 14 trillion.
Yeah, well,
no, that's the problem. Not in our personal life, it's not the amount that we got coming in that we spend. It's the amount that you extend over. It's the amount that you take that $100 a month and extend it to a 30-year mortgage, or you take the boat and you buy it. Buying now, they buy a boat and they pay it all winter, and all that money just goes down the tube. And then by next spring, you have health problems and you never use the boat. Well, for the guy who sells boats, that's okay. That helps his business. The people who make boats, that makes that up. But it gives them a false information on how many people out there need boats.
Yeah. All right. What do you? We're only a few minutes left. Let me just get some a quick response. Somebody loses their job this week. What do you tell them? Once the shock is that you've been laid off, and it's happening out there. And I realize that's a shock, and it sends a chill down you. What do you tell those people? What do they do now?
Well, I think we need to go back and find out again. I talk to God, find out what's going on. Why'd you lose a job?
Well, it's a layoff.
It's a layoff. Yeah, but why?
Well, the company can't afford to have you.
We don't lay off workers. We don't lay off good people. We don't lay off people that are producers. We lay off problems.
No.
We lay off.
You're not dealing.
We have a
you're not.
of,
you don't have your foot in the right boat.
We're going to take this business and we're going to take out this whole industry side, and we're going to clean up our business.
No, that's one of the
we
reasons
have
for
reasons
no,
why.
that's
okay.
one of the reasons.
So
there are people who are innocently being laid off because the company can't. It's had a downturn. They have to go. They have to. You just did. All right. I mean that.
Okay.
All right. I realize sometimes companies use the term layoff to clean house.
Correct.
And I get that.
But I start there.
Okay, but if a person has been innocently laid off because, not that they're a poor worker, their number was up and the company had to cut and they're out the door. What do you tell that person that comes home and now has to start life?
I'm still going back to God.
Okay.
Okay, now what do you want me to do?
Well, I'm asking you.
That's what I said. I'm asking God, what does he want me to do?
Okay.
You laid me off for a reason.
All right.
What's the purpose? Why?
All right.
Okay, is it to minister to my wife? Is it to take care of my kids? Is it to do something different? Is it something going on? I always believe there's a reason for it. Go back to God and find out why. Okay, and then I apply for everything. Unemployment, welfare, food stamps, talk to the church, get all the blessings, everything you can, because you still got to eat, you still got to stay, and then see if each one of those items, there's items, a downturn can be a real good thing that happens. I know it's a sad thing. I know it's a problem, but having been through a couple, it's amazing what it cleans up in your life that you weren't willing to get rid of.
Yeah, I will
Okay,
admit
I'm
that.
sorry for that.
Yeah.
And yes, it's uncomfortable, and yes, there you may have gotten laid off just because God wants to deal with your self-esteem, because you think because I work, I make money, I'm head of the household, I'm the leader, I have value. God, what did he tell you? I can't do anything with the radio station until you release it. Mm-hmm. So we have a downturn, and you're perfectly innocent, right? Mm-hmm. Well, except the Bible says all of sin comes short of the glory of God. So I need to go back to God and find out what's going on. Okay, and then I don't send out 500 resumes and do all that. I really want. There are some occupations that you're genetically not correct to handle. You emotionally can't handle it. You're not educated enough to handle it. I mean, there's a lot of places that you don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be in this outfit or sell this business or do this or do that. And so, Lord, within how you made me, what can I look for? Where can I go? Or what can I do? And it's interesting to see how people that really seek first the kingdom and how they come out of this.
All right, we got to scoot. Andy Maurer heads up Christian Financial Management, and he's been through this drill 965,000 times. Still giving sound advice. And let me give you his number, 776-0036, if you need to call his office and make a confidential appointment. Thanks, pal. And hang in there, huh?
Well, we'll take the calls and see you next week, see what goes on.
You're going to go to the Bible study, get beat up for what you said on the air, and then you report on it next week.
Boy, I tell you, my 2 business classes are going to take me to task. I can feel it already.
We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.